at the rear there. Thank you. So we have apologies from CEO Leone and Deputy Mayor O'Neill Stevens. Would someone like to move those apologies? Moved Councillor Dowler, seconded Councillor Courtney. All those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Against, the resolution is carried. And then we'll move to the public forum, and just a slight change to the agenda. It's now Alan and Richard rather than Kyle. So if you'd like to come up to the table there at the rear, front. So welcome. As you are speaking on behalf of a group, it's 10 minutes. I'll give you an indication at 8 minutes.
Well, thank you. Firstly, apologies for Kyle. He has hospital appointment now, and but I'm Alan Neal, and with me alongside me is Richard Copenhagen. We are both AA Nelson District Councillors, previous chairs of our organisation, and national councillors. Now, Richard has put together a presentation on some potential improvements pre-Hope bypass. Richard.
Thank you. First up, just to set the scene, I'd just like to say that AA is very supportive of the proposed Hope bypass and also supports the suggested change of scope that the project covers from Annesbrook roundabout to State Highway 60 Appleby Highway. We do have concern regarding how far away it will be before the actual work is completed, and congestion is likely to get worse during that time. We would like to suggest a number of small discrete projects that could be undertaken prior to the construction of the Hope bypass. These projects would help ease congestion in the interim, leading up to the completion of the bypass, and the projects suggested would ultimately become part of the Hope bypass, complementing the construction of the bypass. Next slide, please. Sorry. Then we go to the next slide again. Thank you. The first one is the intersection with McClashan Avenue coming off Richmond Deviation. The issue here is that traffic heading to Richmond Town Centre can't actually turn into the slip lane until approximately 70 metres before the intersection. Prior to that, they're stuck in a single file of traffic, both being held up and also adding to the congestion. If the left slip lane was extended, this would allow Richmond Town destination traffic to exit off the deviation quicker, thus freeing up lane space and reducing the congestion for the traffic travelling straight through the intersection. And ideally, the south lane of the Richmond deviation would be 2-lane the full length. Next slide, please. You can see there from the white car, that's about the position where you have to be before you can get into that left slip lane. It's quite close. There is some infrastructure there, some light poles and the Welcome to Richmond sign that would need to be relocated. But extending that slip lane even a few hundred metres would help significantly. But our preference would be the full length of the deviation if that was possible. Next slide, thank you. The next intersection is approaching Queen Street for people turning right to go down Lower Queen Street. And you can see there's a vehicle circled there in red. What happens is they stack beyond that and start blocking the through lane where the white vehicle is about to travel. Next slide, sorry. Yeah. So you can see there's a stack of vehicles wanting to turn right. There's a red arrow, and it only takes 1 or 2 more vehicles or a truck and it completely blocks that through lane. Worse still is they don't stack over the intersection, and they stack further back here, and it doesn't take many trucks or vehicles before you're actually impinging on the whole lane and everyone gets stopped. The through traffic can't go because there's a red right arrow there and it's all stacking back. What we'd like to suggest is that the phasing of that right turn the traffic lights be looked at and investigated whether it could be extended, even if it's only for certain times of the day when there's a particular pinch point. But if that right turn phase could be lengthened a little bit, that might help ease that. Ideally, that whole stacking lane would be lengthened right to the intersection to have a bit more capacity to avoid blocking the through lanes. Next slide, please. And again, with the same intersection, we have a similar problem if you're coming from Lower Queen Street and wanting to turn left on the free turn lane to go onto the Richmond deviation or to go to McLashan Ave to head into Richmond town. Next slide, please. You can see there it's a very short stacking by only a couple of vehicles to turn left. And if you get 3 or 4 vehicles wanting to go straight through into Richmond town centre or to turn right to go down towards Hope, it completely blocks the ability to turn left onto the deviation. Next slide, please. So what we'd like to suggest is that chunk of land in the middle, we understand, is already owned by the taxpayers of New Zealand, and relocating the fence inward, obviously be some negotiation with the leaseholder, but inward to create actually a separate left turn lane to get onto the deviation, and extending it actually back around in the Stratford Street, because also what happens is people coming from Beach Road and Stratford Street turning right, they stack there and it completely blocks anyone turning left out of Stratford Street to head this way. So creating a dedicated right turn lane to go down Lower Queen Street from Stratford Street and a dedicated left turn lane from Stratford Street to allow traffic, and then carrying that left turn lane all the way around and up. Next slide, please. This is probably of lesser importance, but the merging lane after Oxford Street is very short. Next slide, please. And what happens is people merging back up, and it gets to the point where sometimes the green light is green, but you can't actually move forward across the intersection because there's 2 lanes of vehicle trying to merge into one. You'll note there that the footpath at that point is parallel with the boundary, but just up past the truck, it angles out. And if that footpath is actually relocated so it followed the boundary line of the properties, you could extend that merging lane quite a considerable distance that would allow more merging. The beauty of 2 lanes through traffic lights, it allows 2 lanes of traffic through the lights when they're green, so you get double the number of vehicles through a set of lights. But if they then get constrained trying to merge like a zip and there's no stacking room, it just backs it up. So that would be another suggestion. Next slide, thanks, Kelsey. And then lastly, the travelling north on State Highway 6, if you want to turn left into Lower Queen Street, you can't actually get into the left turn lane until you pass where that truck is that's circled in red. And what happens is a lot of vehicles that want to turn left down Lower Queen Street, but they're stuck in a queue of traffic and you can't actually get to the left turn lane. And what happens is until the lights go green and those ones move forward, often that left turn lane is empty, and then people finally get into it just as the lights turn orange and are prevented from turning. Now, you can, so extending that left turn lane further along here would help that situation. This could be complicated because you can see the boundary line here and then it steps out. So it would be the negotiation thing with these property owners to see if some land could be acquired off them to extend that left lane. So that might be a bit more tricky, but again, we're throwing into the mix of suggestions. Next slide, please. So our suggested priority order would be number 1 would extend the Richmond deviation southbound left turn slip lane that exits into McLashan Avenue to cater for that Richmond town centre destination traffic. The second one would be to investigate phasing of the traffic lights for the right turn lane into Lower Queen Street, and also ideally also lengthening that right turn lane to allow more stacking. And number 3 would be reconfigure Lower Queen Street onto Richmond deviation free left turn to create some more capacity there. The other two suggestions are of lower priority, which is lengthen the south merging lane after Oxford Street and to lengthen the northbound left turn lane into Queen Street. Thank you. Next slide. We're finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Alan. Questions or clarification? So, under our standing orders, so Mayor Smith.
The big question that you are attempting to bring ideas to the table is around some short-term improvements before we're able to secure the very substantive investment on what has now been identified as a road of national significance. Correct. At what point, we're advised that the investment case is going up to the board in the middle of this year, so only a month or two away. At what point do you proceed with these alternative, what I sort of call nips and tucks, as compared with a big bang? In other words, if we had a commitment from NZTA and government that they were going to get on with the construction of the Hope Bypass in the next 18 months, what would be the length of time of the delay of that to where you would want us to be able to advance these quite sensible improvements to the Queen Street intersection?
Yeah, I guess from a motorist point of view, ideally the sooner the better. I imagine that the Hope Bypass is a project in itself. You wouldn't be doing the whole thing in one piece. It would be staged. So, you know, you're not going to do from Atapu Highway all the way to Annesbrook Roundabout in one piece. So maybe these projects could be some of the earlier parts of a staging process to give some interim relief until the whole project is completed.
So if we had indications of the Hope Bypass being done in stages, your suggestion would be to add these sensible intersection improvements, which is probably the most acute bottleneck, onto the first of those stages, so there can be some relief for the community.
Yes, that's right. And those areas need addressing as part of the whole Hope Bypass design anyway. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything further?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
So now we'll move to declarations of interest. Any declarations to be made? If not, we'll move on to late items, which there are no. Then we'll move to confirmation of minutes of the joint Nelson Tasman Regional Transport Committee meeting held on Monday the 10th of March.
I shall move the adoption.
Moved Mayor Smith, seconded Councillor Dowler. Do all those in favour please say aye.
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 Against? The resolution is carried. Thank you. Now we'll move to reports. So firstly, New Zealand Transport Agency, Emma. Update. I think we've got a PowerPoint.
Talking. But okay, I'll race through the national updates and then into our regional updates as well. So nationally, we've obviously had the biggest summer season ever with over 2,000 lane kilometres done over the summer period, and the rehabilitations, which is where we dig out several layers of the road and rebuild them, has also been very disruptive, but also we'll see some significant improvement in our network, and some of those rehab works are still ongoing. Down here, works were done quite early in the season, so this mostly resilience work now continuing, but so really big program of work, and then we'll go back into the monitoring the network over winter and preparing for next summer. We're also rolling out our risk-based traffic management approach across the NOC contracts, and so we'll see seeing some changes to how we manage those sites over time. The other key development area is the integrated delivery contract procurement. So this is moving from the network outcome contract model to the integrated delivery contract model. And these are quite big changes impacting right across the country. So there is a lot of work doing the preparation for that, and then obviously negotiating through to the end of the year to get those contracts in place. National ticketing system is undergoing further development. So I think I've previously commented on the pilot that was done on Route 29 in Christchurch from the airport into town. And that's been really successful. So people can just use a debit or credit card to tag on, tag off, or tag on. They don't need to tag off in this one. So what we've identified as we've gone through the development process is that the proposed approach to rolling out was relying on essentially getting everything perfect before we went to roll out. The success of this trial has encouraged us to look at rolling out these, the ability to use those other cards potentially a bit sooner. So we are just looking at how we can make sure we're getting that rollout right to give the benefit to the customer. And we're continuing to work, particularly in the Christchurch with ECAN, to test and get that right. And then we'll confirm the schedule for everyone else transitioning. And as soon as we have that done, we'll let you know. But we're continuing to work with the team here as we proceed with that development process. Big week coming up next week, which is Road Safety Week. And this is yellow is our signature colour for Road Safety Week. And we try and light up civic buildings and structures, and we do things like visits to schools, highlighting the great work that our school patrols do and other people around the country who are helping keep people safe on the roads. So you'll see a bit of work on that. We have a website with resources and things available, and we'll be, I'll certainly be in schools talking with kids next week. And really encouraging people to keep safe out there on the network. One of the key things that's been underway is implementing the setting of speed limits rule 2024. So we have gone through that process on the state highway network. On certain designated roads, we've gone through a consultation process, and we'll be going through the implementation process for the changes and reversals where they are required to go ahead, and that's 1 July. And then there are some local roads that also require reversals that have a deadline of 1 July. And then there'll be ongoing work, particularly regarding schools, to make sure schools have the new speed signs outside schools. So there's, I think all RCAs were required to advise us by 1 May of what needed to happen or whether nothing needed to change. So that was a pretty important step. We do have the identified email addresses there for any questions around the policy, any questions around how to implement it, and any questions around funding. And I think both your councils have been actively involved in talking to people on this one.
at the end of the section, if you like.
Sure. So now, no sooner do we finish one RLTP round than we start planning for the next GPS and RLTP round. And so we are starting our work with the Ministry of Transport. So the Ministry of Transport supports the development of the GPS on behalf of the Minister. And so we are starting to think about what's going to be required as we look ahead through to 2035-36. So long-term planning horizons reflecting the expectation of the current GPS that we move to longer-term timeframes. And so we are starting to look at what is the funding required to maintain and improve the transport service to the different levels of service that we could aspire to. What are the priorities for major improvement opportunities across the network? So we will be looking at getting that information in, and we will be talking to you about that as we go through the process working with the ministry. So we want to look at how both the state highway and local road network will develop and change over time. And the initial response will be September this year, and then we'll work on that and refine it in response to any questions through to February of next year. And then that will be ready for further work as we go through 2026. As you know, we'll have the normal processes that we get a draft GPS towards the end of the year. We have an election, and then we will have a final GPS hopefully soon after that. Emergency works, we went through a process of consultation with you all around changing both the threshold for emergency works and the FAR rates for emergency works. And the board's decided not to make changes at this time, but we are still obviously very focused on how do we ensure that an environment where we see more frequent and more impactful events, how do we make that affordable for us and for local government, and how do we work together to make sure that what we're doing is fit for purpose, and that we can actually, all parties can actually afford that, to keep the road network resilient and to repair it when those incidents happen. We'll be obviously working with Ministry of Transport on GPS, and the intention is that we will revisit that as part of the next NLTP. So we still need to manage those costs carefully together, and but this allows us all a bit more time to work through what that might mean and how we'll do it. And we have made some minor changes to investment policies that you can see on our website. But I think that the key thing, as with many areas of our activities, we do need to plan for how to manage this and how to manage the overall cost impact of it. And you're very familiar with that on both of your councils with the events you've had to manage through. Coming back to speed, we do have two further sections that are currently open for consultation feedback, and these are new formal speed reviews as opposed to the reversals of specified roads under the transition requirements of the rule. So these are under what we would call a normal speed review process, where we take into account public feedback, but we also use a cost benefit tool to assess the economic impact, and we take into account safety on those sections as well. And I know the communities, particularly at Marybank, have been very active in advocating for maintaining the current speed limit, which technically is a lowering of the speed that would be raised under reversal provisions. So we have had a large number of submissions, which is really positive, and that's open until 14th of May, and the online submissions are available there. We've also worked with members of the community who have been strong advocates for this review and provided paper copies through the libraries and schools in the community for people who weren't comfortable doing the online submissions. The outcome of that broader speed limit consultation process between Blenheim and Nelson has been a majority of submissions supporting increasing speed limits back to prior speed limits. So all 7 sections of road will be changed back to previous higher speed limits of 100 kilometres an hour by 1 July 2025, and we will be advising those dates soon. There is one section in there that was captured outside Woodburn Airport that we did some further investigation and discovered that actually it was 80 kilometres a long time prior to the 2020 date. So that section will stay at 80, but all other sections will reverse as required under the rule.
Thank you, Emma. That's probably a good place to stop for some questions. Neil Smith. Neil.
3 questions. The first one, and they're reasonably quick fire. With respect to the move from the B card with our public transport services, you noted in your report the success of a trial in Canterbury. Does that have any impact on the National Ticketing Solutions implementation date for our own public transport in Nelson, Tasman? I think the previous reports we were looking at doing it about the middle of 2026. Does the successful trial, either from you or our own officials, change the expected date of us proceeding with our switch under Project Mutu Move?
We are expecting some changes to those implementation dates, but I don't have the final schedule of that yet. So we're still working through it. The vast majority of technology platform has been worked through. The challenge is any concessions and special fares and layering on the additional things.
Yeah.
So the technology is certainly largely completed in terms of preparation. The trial is showing that the tap on using credit and debit cards is working, but in terms of the actual time frame for this region, we're still to determine exactly when that will happen.
Are our own officials able to give us guidance as to what is the current planned date for that switch?
Through the chair, no further date other than what has been advised. We're still waiting for a final date. But at this stage, we have indicated that it's probably mid-26. It could be slightly later. But to answer your question, we're still awaiting a final date.
My second question is high level of public interest in the Atifai stretch. Submissions close on the 14th of May. How soon after that would you expect NZTA to be making a decision? I'm not sure. I would ask my Tasman colleagues on the Wakefield stretch, but I know there's a high level of interest in the Atifai community. We know it has to be made, I think, by the 1st of July. Would you be so bold to give a guesstimate as to the time frame? A week, a fortnight, a month?
I would hope that we would be able to do the analysis and get a decision within a month. Certainly the timing of the consultation process was designed to enable us to implement any decision on 1 July.
And my third question was with respect to your helpful update with respect to Hope Bypass, of which you would have heard the submission from the AA. My question is, you've advised that it's going to the board in mid-year. You have lots of wonderful acronyms within NZTA, and I'm just trying to get a sense of, is the decision for the board in June on the High Bypass whether they proceed and release the funding to be able to do the next key stage, which is the design and the consultation with property owners around the resource consenting. Can you just give me a description?
I'll come back to that because I've got a slide on the Hope Bypass,
okay.
But I'll cover that as part of that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all.
I've got ahead of myself.
Councillor Dowler and Councillor Courtney.
Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, last weekend I went for a trip, pre-planned trip to Canterbury. Fortunately, the events that I was going to were cancelled, good reasons. Anyway, down State Highway 1 from Christchurch to Ashburton, I couldn't get over how bad the condition of that highway was with potholes. And I mean, like, coned 50 Ks. And even then, we were still crossing the white line in the middle of the road to get around the damn things because they were that wide, the areas were that wide, and they were the steep, some of them. So I assume that our state highway network and on the other side of the Hillberg State Highway one's in pretty good nick. I'm told it is. So that means that we're doing a lot better than our counterparts down south, if that's correct. Just a comment on that one, really, I suppose. It was really, really surprising to see that. I was absolutely gobsmacked and disappointed. And in the passing bays as well. The new flash passing bays were just trashing. Okay, so number 2, while I was down there, I was also surprised to see a lot of 30-kilometre-hour fixed speed limit signs with the hours of 9 till 9:30 or whatever outside the schools, all in place. I drove through Rolleston. There was 2 schools there that they were in place. There was one out at Leaston and there was a couple in Ashburton. So obviously it's legal to put them up now and get it going. Maybe.
So if they meet the requirements of the rule, so you can't have a fixed speed limit sign that's there outside the school hours signs, school hours as specified in the rule. So yes, councils can move to put those in place.
Yeah, these had the hours you had to do 30 K and then underneath when children are present. I was quite taken by the fact that I saw so many, and I thought, well, didn't think we were doing anything along those lines at the moment. Maybe we can. I'm just asking whether we possibly could.
Implementation is you have until the middle of next year to fully implement the changes to speeds outside schools, and it's really a matter for officers working through the funding for that through the low cost, low risk funding arrangements.
Yeah, I'll stop there. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Emma, for your report. They're always interesting.
I haven't covered the local roads yet.
Well, I'm waiting to phone it, Brett. I'm getting more excited about that by the minute. Can I take you back to the national ticketing program? And Nick did touch on the question about, likely implementation, but I would like to take that a little bit further. When you come to implementing the program, are you planning to do it nationwide, or are you going to suggest it be done region by region? Can you give us some guidance on that?
Yes, it's a nationwide rollout that will be done region by region. Yeah. So we need our teams to work through each region, make sure it gets up and running, is working well, and then they'll move on to the next one.
Not in unison, right?
So yeah, it is likely to roll out relatively quickly, but we are wanting to make sure the customer experience is good, and that means we have to take that care as we go through it.
Do you see some value in coordinating it nationwide at all?
For the majority of journeys that people will be making, they're making it with one provider. So in Nelson, Tasman, all your local bus services are within the region. So for most people, that will make the most sense. Obviously, once it's all rolled out, then people will have the ability, wherever they go, they don't need to go and buy a separate B card or a snapper card or whatever in each different location.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butler on Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor. Chair. Yeah, look, I just would like to ask a question about the speed limit changes. And as regards the changes from Nelson to Blenheim, the consultation, I understand, and it has been in the media that the majority of local feedback submissions were actually in favour of retaining the 80k speed limit, and that there was about the majority overall was to return it to 100, which would indicate that the majority of submissions came from outside the region. So reflecting on that, the speed limit changes underway with Marybank and Wakefield North, which you have said is a different or more standard process. Is there a risk that that the local community submissions could be overwhelmed by perhaps more ideological submissions from the rest of the country, in the same way as appears to have happened with Nelson to Blenheim? So maybe, just a sort of a brief description of how those, the weighing up of the local community submissions against submissions from outside the district would work for Marybank and Wakefield North.
Sure. So under the transitional provisions for the specified roads where we chose to consult, we could only take into account the submissions for and against the change. That was the only matter we could consider. For a process that we're going through under the standard provisions of the new rule, we can take into account other factors such as the cost-benefit analysis and the safety analysis, and we can consider a more detailed analysis of the submissions in terms of how they are using the road and the impact that that has as part of that consideration. So it is a different process. We still have to run that process under the new rule in order to determine exactly what the outcome will be. So we can't predetermine the outcome. Once we've done that, obviously, I'll be very happy to talk to you about how that has actually worked in practice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just a question, and first a couple of questions from myself, if I may, Emma, just in relation to the item Councillor Butler's just been talking about. So I'm a little confused about the Marybank situation, the Hira situation. So the speed limit's going back up, but being reviewed to come back down. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, so under the transitional provisions of the rule, all specified roads must return to their prior speed limit on 1 July. For a number of roads, so we have 2 here in this region and a few others around the country, as a result of community feedback, we've undertaken a new speed review, which considers, as at 1 July, should that speed limit have been reversed, should it then be lowered to a lower speed that is currently actually in place. And if the response to that and the analysis comes up with the answer that it should be lowered, then effectively there'll be no change on 1 July. But if the response says no, it should remain at a higher speed, then it will change on 1 July, as will the others.
So just to follow on from that, so most likely, there's a lot of submissions in support of keeping it the lower. It won't change to the higher. It'll just stay at the lower.
Correct.
1st of July.
Yeah.
That's a complex way of doing it.
So yeah, it is, but it is about the date of implementation. And so we have to, because there are 2 separate processes, but it's just our ability in these small number of cases to run a new process prior to the implementation of the first decision.
Yeah, understand now. And then my second question, just related to your first slide around maintenance, more of a comment than a question. It's generally, as you've alluded to in the slide, there's been a lot done across many districts, and I think it'll be beneficial in the long term. it has been disruptive while that's been happening, but it's for the better good. And when we come to the local section, I'll comment on the improvements that have happened, particularly in the southern area of the region, have made a real improvement. So I guess it's a little bit of pain for a lot of gain.
Yes, and one of the things that we've been doing, we've had some quite disruptive rehabs that are still underway. They're running through right through till June and on State Highway 2 in North Island. We've actually done some quite helpful diagrams of what a rehab actually is. And so in terms of the life of your road, a rehab digs down 30 centimetres or more in some cases, stabilises any areas of unstable or poor ground underneath the road, and then rebuilds all the upper layers. And those rehabs have a 25-year life, and then the top seal has around a 10-year life, and that's your waterproofing. It's the painting of your house, so you've got to have a stable base, but then you have to then maintain the surface. When we do a rehab, which are the very disruptive works, it is about rebuilding that whole road structure, but the benefits are long term. So you're looking around 25 years.
Excellent, thank you. Is there any further questions from anyone? If not, we'll move on to the next section. Thanks, Emma.
So these ones there's a lot of information here, and we've had some great, I have to say, some of our local workers are turning into little media stars, because we've done a few stories on these local road works and what's being done, and had the workers profiled and the work that they're doing. So we set, for Nelson Tasman, we set 150% stretch target, so going well above our planned normal planned maintenance works, and we achieved that. So that was a phenomenal amount of work. And so the rehabs were 7.9 lane kilometres and resealing 80.9 lane kilometres. I went up with the team and had a look at the Milnthorpe rehab, went through site there, and with very significant works up there, and really good traffic management there. They had pilot vehicles actually taking traffic through to keep the speeds down and keep the workers safe through that work program. So that was done nice and early in the season. Pothole prevention is going well. We've got a 24-hour response rate for 95% of those, and any reporting through to 0800 for highways is enabling us to keep on top of that. And we've done 100% of our drainage renewals, which is around 3% of the network. And I saw the team yesterday were up on the Whangamoas doing some more water table work. So just keeping ahead of that prior to winter. So that is a very big program of work for the pavements and drainage works. As I mentioned earlier, the New Zealand Guide to Temporary Traffic Management comes in from 1 July, and the new contract request for tenders went out in March, and we're doing evaluations through June and on track for contracting through to the end of the year and implementing next year. And the much mentioned Hope Bypass. So we are on track with the investment case and aiming to have this through to the board in mid-2025, and then move to design and consenting. So we do have our new webpage up, and that is going to be a great resource for people to get the latest information, and appreciate the items identified by the AA members today. Each of these areas is under very close investigation, and I think one of the really important things that the team has been doing, and had great support from our council officers as well, is to get the modelling updated both for the full region-wide tracks model and the more detailed VISM model, which looks at all of the local intersections and how they perform. So that modelling is really important. I think what we'll see is that it validates the experience of people, that we see a lot of challenges, particularly at that Lower Queen Street area and through the deviation. So that modelling is going to be really important, and once that's all completed, it will wrap into the investment case. Once we have an investment case, if the board do approve us to proceed, I'm anticipating that we will look to move as quickly as we can through that process. For the section that was being discussed earlier by the AA and the northern section of the map that's up on screen, we do already own a large portion of the land there and have designation. So that is quite a positive thing for enabling us to move faster if we're able to, and if we get approval from the board based on the investment case. So we are looking at that, and we'll continue to plan as much as we can for the options that enable us to proceed quickly if the board's able to improve that investment case. So obviously I can't preempt any decisions in that space, but we are very aware of the concerns that have been raised about the impact on people's journeys through this section. And we want to ensure that we've got a really strong evidence base for how and where to invest in the Hope Bypass. So we are continuing to do a lot of work, and as soon as we have a board decision and are authorised to communicate that, we will definitely be in touch first and foremost with the councils to let you know, and then we'll obviously move on to the logistics of the next phase.
You want to take questions on that now? I think you do, Mayor Smith.
Just so I understand the acronyms and the terminology, and a lot of time been spent over the last couple of months with Health New Zealand, and they talk about an investment case, and then they talk about the next phase being a detailed business case from which the capital funding is then provided. Am I taking it that if the Board of NZTA approves the investment case at its meeting in June, that enables you to move through to the design and consenting phase? What's your terminology for the next hurdle after the investment case? Do you call it a detailed business case? I'm just trying to line up the key hurdles we need to get over to get progress.
In the process that we're using for the roads of national significance, the main hurdle is the investment case. It may be awarded with conditions, so that obviously we need to work through the Spain award case as well, and work with Mana Whenua on any implications that may have. So there are a number of things that are really important, and we want to work through really carefully. But the key decision for this process is the investment case.
So it's hugely important. Can I just clarify? The AA in their presentation, which is my understanding as well, is that block of dirt that is on the northwestern side of the current Richmond deviation and north of Queen Street, of which they detailed some of the short-term improvements you can make. Are you able to confirm that that is owned by NZTA?
Majority of that is owned.
And how restricted are you in the leases that are out to those temporary businesses, the truck firm?
And I wouldn't be across the contractual details of that.
But we do.
But I think the thing to be aware of here is that we want to have a no regrets approach to any investment here. So if the board approved the investment case, and for example, we did start at this end to tackle the challenges here, it would not make any sense for us to invest hundreds of thousands or probably millions in making small improvements if we're about to make those significant improvements. So
I don't want to talk for the AA,
Yeah.
but I think they were saying, well, look, in the initial case where we were 12 months ago, we were not looking at the investment case and potential construction being for 5 or 10 years down the track. And they've said, look, there's no way the community can wait that long. Thus, my question to them, well, if we get a positive decision out of the board and there's reasonable prospects of construction starting within a year or two, then I think they would be keener on getting the main game.
I think I heard that loud and clear.
Yeah.
And I think they'll send me through that presentation, and we'll make sure the team is aware of that. I think all of those points raised are definitely have been picked up by the team already.
What is the public process for any decision being made, being released publicly after the June decision or mid-25 decision, not to misquote you, mid-25 decision?
Don't know
on
exactly which board meeting it'll get to. We've got 17 of these.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So
What's the process post-board for this Regional Transport Committee and the community hearing the outcome of the NCP?
so that will be determined by the board, so that they will agree the process by which these get released publicly in consultation with the minister.
I would flag that if this is just so important for both of our two councils, that if it required an urgent meeting of the Regional Transport Committee to be informed of it, then I would like us to take the initiative and to be fully properly briefed. It's just so important.
Yeah, no,
Well,
understood.
if that's the case, we'll be very happy to work with you on that.
Thank you.
Richard.
Oh, is that, sorry, were there any other questions on Hope?
I was just clarification on the scope. Understand the initial investments case is only going to State Highway 60, Free Brothers Corner, not right through to Hughes Road.
The board hasn't made a final decision on the investment case at this stage. They have considered the range of options that have been presented. I've heard that somewhere before. So moving on to the other area of quite significant work program that's been underway and is still ongoing. We have a huge resilience program across the region, and I think I love this region because it has such good names for each section of the state highway. It's not from kilometre 322 to kilometre 327. But anyway, so we've done the initial drainage work on the whangamais, and we will soon be confirming the next phase of work that will go from May for around 8 to 10 weeks. And it's really critical because this is where we've seen this on both the whangamais and Taka Hill, that when we have runoff water running over the road, where it comes off the road is really important, because if it comes off in the wrong place, it washes out under the road. So these are really important resilience works that we'll be doing, and that will have some disruption to journeys on State Highway 6 as they are completed. Birds Hill drainage has been completed. So we're now looking at what happens with the dewatering, which is the process where if you drive past, you'll be able to see each of those little drainage tubes with water coming out of them, and that is being monitored to see whether that provides enough stability for the hillside, and we need the winter and plenty of rain to see how that holds up. Moving through the list, we've got the Gowan River Bridge work completed with that washout. Higgins Bluff rock scaling works completed, and we'll come back later in the year to do the rest of that. Howard's Narrows is about to be getting underway, and we'll do that rock bolting, which you're probably quite familiar with now. Hope Saddle, again, here we're starting with the investigations and looking at the underslip there to see what the right treatment is for a retaining wall. And finally down to Granity Narrows and the Sullivan's Bluff, where we're seeing ongoing rock walls and just trying to work through what the next step is for those ones in terms of reducing the risk. We just, wherever possible, we don't want to see those rocks coming down and being a hazard for drivers.
Thank you. Councillor Dowling, you had a question?
Well done on that list. Quite happy to see that. No dramas. My question is for the future. Just recently I read somewhere that the NZTA were doing bridge assessments throughout the region, and one of the bridges in my world that is starting to show signs of its age is the Motueka Bridge. So will we be getting any detail or data on the outcome of the bridge assessments in the near future at all?
I can talk to the team and see what the outcome of that work has been. They did look at a lot of bridges through the top of the south, and they haven't identified any major structural problems with any bridges. So I do know that, but in terms of the any detailed information on the Motueka Bridge, I'd have to come back to you with the detail.
Just a couple of questions I made for myself and Emma. Just firstly, pulled out from State Highway 6, Gowan River Bridge, down to the bottom of the list, all in the Lakes Murchison ward. So they're important for the raw money. Yeah, a lot of money spent there, which is appreciated, but they really are inter-regional connector roads and very important. So just a couple of things about that. And yeah, I think they just finished Higgins's Bluff last week, and now I think this week or next you're starting on the Narrows on State Highway 63. It's all important work that you keep doing, so that's appreciated. The bottom one, State Highway 6, Granity Narrows and those, that's been a problem ever since I was a teenager, with rocks falling down and continuing to fall down. So will you be looking for something that'll be a more longer term solution there?
Yeah, so I think the first thing we want to do is do that investigation and understand what the nature of the rock is and what's triggering the fall. And so whether that is a longer term solution or a proactive management regime, we'll just have to weigh that up once we've been on site for those investigations. So there are sections like this all over the country, and you know, as we get more experience with them, we can identify which of those, whether it's rock scaling or whether it's bolting or mesh, or occasionally blowing them up.
That sounds like fun. And I guess my last question, it's not on the list, but I was under the understanding at Delos there was some work to come back to there.
Yes.
Is that yet to come, is it?
Yes, so that's the where we've had that the slurry slip come down the side there. And so we had a plan to go in there, but we discovered that there was quite a bit of risk of material falling onto the recovery site. So the team decided, rather than try and get in, and actually fortuitously they decided not to start the works because the recent rain events would have stopped it anyway. So they decided, rather than getting set up and then have to pull out, they'd wait till next summer and take that time to identify a really safe access route into the slurry site. There is a lot of material that needs to be taken out to make that resilient. And as long as we can get safe access, we'll crack into that next summer.
Excellent, thank you. Is the access likely to be an issue?
No.
Okay,
the local farm has been very
one in particular has, yes,
very positive in working with us. Yeah.
And he appreciates what you've done for him as well. So thank you. Any further questions related to that? If not, thank you, Emma. Thank you for the report. Do we have to receive that or anything? No, all good. So we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is public transport review update. James and Dwayne and Linda. So James, when you're ready, welcome to you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair. So the two key updates from the report that we've submitted is firstly to provide a summary of the short-term improvements that we presented at the last Regional Transport Committee back in March. We're now working towards these, and these are included in Table 1 of the report. And the second key update, at the last Transport Committee in March, we had a discussion around the inflation mechanism to be added to B-card fares. The terms of reference for this group are that the public transport contract indices rates as provided by NZTA is the correct mechanism from the terms of reference. And the latest inflation rate for this is 2.69%, and that's from December 2024. So that's the latest rate that we've received from NZTA. That's what we propose to add on to the B-card fares from 1 July this year.
Thank you. Anything further? Happy to take questions. Mayor Smith.
My first question is on the optimisation and improvements for our bus routes. I'm just wanting to be clear that the issues around the Junction Shopping Centre are on the list of potentials. The description of them there, I'm just not absolutely clear as to whether that's on our radar. It's quite complicated when you've got the private ownership of the land within it. You're very close to the very busy quarantine, so I'm not naive about challenges, but I am really keen to make sure that, particularly as there's now going to be a supermarket opened there in the next few months, as to whether we can maximise its connection with our e-bus service. So my question is in those list of optimisations and potential improvements, is the junction the closest bus stop to the junction on the potentials?
Yeah, correct. So we're looking to move essentially reroute Route 4 down on Pascoe Street to serve the junction. But the table includes short-term improvements and the medium-term improvements, which were identified in the original public transport review. Serving into the junction itself is on a medium-term improvement as we're looking at. Potentially this may require smaller buses, which we have to have a discussion around, potentially using the sprinter buses on that route.
Thank you.
Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. James has just triggered a thought in my mind. I'm being continually approached by people wanting smaller buses around our hillsides, particularly in Nelson. So I'd really like that to be front of mind when you get involved more closely in the review. When you talk about smaller buses, that triggered the thought as far as I was concerned. There is great concern, I have to say.
Yes, through the chair, the smaller buses on that route is part of that medium-term discussion. This challenge we've got is that running buses through the junction itself from pavement and other issues, a smaller bus makes sense. Our challenge would become if we ran buses through there, would the ridership get up to a point where actually we need big buses? So that's the challenge and the balance. But we are engaging with a number of hillside residents on buses and other issues. So, yeah, we're well aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Could I be cheeky and ask one other one?
Oh yeah, the councillor there. Yeah,
Sorry.
There you go now. The councillor there.
The decision was made, and really appreciative of the work that the officials put in with the bus company, Suburban Buses, on the bike racks. have officers had any feedback since we've reinstalled them as to whether there's been any difficulties, any incidents, or is it all plain sailing?
Actually, we've had no feedback. It's been great that we got them back on. So I think good. No news is good news.
Councillor Dower.
Just route 5 and 6 shows up there that there's 2 more additional bus stops going to happen. So will that affect the timetable each way by a delay of another 5 minutes or something like that? Because I know you can't determine how the bus is going to get back out in the flow of traffic, but I stand and watch, and people don't seem to like to allow buses back into the stream. So I'm just working on those ones that are got a fine line getting to places to attend work and stuff. It's just going to cause a delay.
Yeah, generally, you'd expect a delay. We did recently put some more runtime into those 2 routes, and I think there's actually enough to cover any additional bus stops. However, when we do have a timetable change, we're going to have another look at it to make sure there's enough runtime for any stops we put in.
Councillor Dow.
Yeah, I also asked the last meeting, we mentioned at the last meeting that whenever I come over in the bus, we're going through
Berry Fields.
Berry Fields there, and all the times I've been on the bus has never, this is from Watawaka, has never stopped, picked anybody up. So I thought it might have been able to just go down Exchange Road and turn right and come straight into town instead of wiggling through and that would take 1 stop out of it as well if the stop ever was used. I don't know how well it's used or whatever, but it was just a thought on my behalf. I didn't know whether that's been considered or not.
Yes, I actually do remember you saying that, and we haven't considered it yet, but we will do, because if there's not picking anyone up, it makes sense.
Thank you. Councillor Courtney.
Thank you.
You read me mind, Richard.
Thank you, Chair Stewart. James, I'm still anxious about the higher fares for our new buses. And I want an assurance from you that you're always mindful of balancing the fare increases that you're considering with affordability for people who are struggling to make ends meet. Accessibility, too, that's another one. And the impact it's going to have on our overall community. Because we're in the heart, I don't want to break into a quarter to more than that. So I want to be assured that that's front of your mind as we go forward, because I do feel uncomfortable having to sit here and approve these increases when I know it's a new business and it's just starting out. And we've got the community goodwill with us and the passengers, all that. And I don't want to see it undermined. So I want that assurance, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the main reason that the last starters here made the recommendation to increase fares in line with inflation and that above inflation. And also why we won't be increasing fares to cash fares, only to B card fares.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a couple of questions from myself before we look to find a mover. Just in relation to table 1, firstly, so I take it from that you're taking the bus off Bolt Road and now going around that way and putting it through Pascoe Street, obviously to get it closer to Mitre 10 in the junction. So how will that affect it? Has there been much patronage on Bolt Road? It's hard to imagine a lot. It's very much an industrial area.
I don't know off the top of my head, but no, we haven't seen any significant boardings and the lightings on Bolt Road. We do need to do some more analysis on the junction between Pascoe Street and Quarantine Road, just to assess that a bus can turn right out of there onto the airport. That's part of the optimisations and improvements work that we're doing.
And then my other question relates to the late bus, which has predominantly been for youth. you're going to run it as an earlier trip, how much earlier? Because I know it was 3 p.m., 3 a.m. previously. What are you going to run it at now?
Well, we have actually got a proposal to start as early as about 7:45, because we know there's a gap in the timetable between 7 and the late bus starting at 9 or 10. So it'd be nice to have something through the gap.
So go right back to the start rather than after, because there'll still be 2 late buses, won't there, if you do that?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, all we would do is pull off the 3 o'clock and the 3:45 that nobody's really catching, and run them earlier.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea. So thank you. So that's me. Looking for someone to move the resolutions. I think the fare adjustments are just CPI related to public transport. So
Happy to move, but can I just follow up with one question? You know, the late bus that you've just asked your question on, it's got very low levels of patronage. And my understanding is those levels of patronage are even less during the winter. Do we have any option? I'm just trying to find every dollar ratepayer savings I can. Is there any option, given that we're likely to drop that, to bring that forward prior to the broader changes in the review? I just want to save some money.
So you're looking to stop it for a few months in the dead of winter?
Well, we've had the advice that it's got low patronage. We made the decision on the bus in Stoke, where equally there was low patronage, that it was very unlikely to survive the review. My question of our officers is the levels of patronage on the late bus so low that we should consider ahead of the review knocking it on the head rather than continuing to pour rate and taxpayer money into a service that I know I saw the figures last winter were even worse in the heart of the winter than what they were in summer. I'm just asking the question. I'm sorry if I'm the always looking for savings person.
So through the chair, the key point for us is to understand what's happening on those routes, and those late services, so the 3 and the 4 service, aren't well utilised. So that's really where our focus has been.
I didn't hear that. Sorry, it was not loud enough.
So the
3 a.m. and the 3:45 a.m.
So the very, very late buses are the ones where the problem is. Are the problem where we've got low patronage.
I understand.
And the look was to balance that with potentially starting those services earlier and potentially starting them from Berryfields, linking in the Silkiota Theatre and the facilities there. So it's a slight shift in demographic, but our approach has been to look, and we've still got some further work to do on that. And our intent is to bring those things back to this committee for decision. So my preference is not to step into those changes without providing this committee with the opportunity to make those calls on costs.
Okay, I would just give an invitation to officials that if there's a no-brainer and a tweak that we can do that will save some money earlier, then feel free to come to us. But you've got to stitch the other things up relative to the contracts and the other pieces of the puzzle you're using. And Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to move the recommendations with regard to the fares, and the comments that I would make is that this Regional Transport Committee can either do an inflation adjustment annually or defer it for 3 or 4 years and then hit our bus users with a big hit. And my preference is to adjust each year. I do note that both superannuation and benefit levels and the minimum wage were all adjusted by a similar amount to what is being proposed. And that is why I am supportive of our officers' recommendation that we nudge up those fees. I also think the officer's recommendation to leave the cash fares as is also sensible. It's a small group of the patronage, but to have our bus drivers working around with small levels of change, it's far more practical to leave those levels. And so I think the small increase on the 1st of July for those B card users is the sensible and prudent thing for us to do in respect of the cost to the ratepayer, but also in terms of not putting our bus users into having a big step in fees down the track.
Thank you, Councillor Downer. Thank you. Joe, did you have something?
Thank you, through you, Chair.
Lelis, I mean, my apologies.
That's right. I'm just curious. I'm quite supportive of the whole point of reviewing everything and making sure that it's well and cost effective. But when we're reviewing the late bus, is it possible to have information about who is using that bus? Because my understanding from those that I am aware of using it, even though the patronage is quite low, is if that was not an option, then those users could be quite vulnerable in the community quite late at night. Generally female, but that would be an assumption. So when we are considering that option, can we please also have some information on who is using it? I'd hate to have it completely based on sex, but what other options are available to those people who can't afford to get around town at that time of night? And why they are using it, because I'd hate to see people being more vulnerable.
Through the chat, yeah, so if they're paying with a B card on that service, we can do some analysis to see which demographics are using the service. You can also, before making any decisions, do a in-person survey, so we could assess who's using the service. If they're paying by cash, they wouldn't be picked up through B card.
Thank you. So come to the recommendation resolution. Is there any further debate around that? If not, I will put that, which wasn't in the agenda. Oh, that's on the screen now. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against. Resolution is carried. Dwayne, I'll come to you. I think you've got one of us small matter.
Yes, thanks. Bill, do you mind just giving the committee an update on the submission on the NZTA speed limit proposals, please?
Welcome, Bo.
Just a very quick update on where staff are proposing to go with the submission on the speed limit changes in Atawhai and Marybank, and Wakefield. We had submitted in the previous consultation on those speed limits, and the RTC had submitted, and the current speed limit consultation has indicated that if a submission has been lodged, then if you want it to be considered, just notify the group and it will be considered. So we're just proposing to notify the speed limit consultation team that our previous submission is considered as part of the process.
Yeah, I wasn't sure we need a resolution. So that can you just confirm our position, which I think from memory was to have them both retained, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. So Kelsey, Dwayne, do we need a resolution or?
This is just for your information. You've resolved previously your position. We're just letting you know we're going to resubmit that through this process, the new process.
Thank you. So with that, if there's nothing further, Dwayne, I'll ask you to do the closing character, please.
Kia hika te korero, kia wātia e mama te manawa o te tangata, ke oki te ara mau tātou e ora nei, e ronga, kia tina, hui e, tai ki e. Let the discussion be lifted, clear away and ease the hearts of people. Keep focus on the path of life. Peace is upheld. Say yes, bind together and so it is.
Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance and enthusiastic input today. Really appreciate that and safe travel home. Thank you.